Oh, you gotta be fucking kidding me. The HDMI ain't working now. Rob. The HDMI ain't working now, but it's fine. Oh shit, I got the wrong way, sorry. And brake on out of the loop for now.
Yep.
No, take it out of the loop.
The HDMI?
No, the SDI. Swap that one out.
Well, good morning everyone and welcome along to round one for King of Canterbury at Euromark Motorsport Park. Starting off today with the Formula 3 and riders out there today who have filled in their rider information sheet. Thank you very much. So, Cappy Colworth, Anson Hung, Christopher Reynolds and Samuel Wright, thank you for filling in your rider information form. I'll make sure to give you guys a shout out during the day. The rest of the riders in the Formula 3 class, please take the opportunity when you can to fill in the forms. In fact, all riders across all classes, please take the opportunity to jump online to the link that's been provided by MCI and fill in the rider form. That way we can give you a shout out. We can shout out to your sponsors and your helpers, tell a little bit of fun facts about you during the day. Makes it so much more fun and interesting for everyone in the pits. So that's looking like the end of that session. Everyone out there having a good look around. Looks like one rider down in the turn 6 Fulton Hogan. Rider's up and okay, so it'll just be a couple of minutes to collect the bike. Remember, of course, everyone, that there is no ambulance here at this stage, so the first session of the day is merely to have a look around. Please ensure you ride safely. There is no ambulance here at the moment. It will take a wee while for help to come if you crash and hurt yourself, so please just take it easy in the warm-up session, first session of the day. The track's cold, the tyres are cold and you're cold. Give it all a chance to come together as the day progresses. So, Cappy Colworth, age 24, riding a Yamaha R3. He's based in Christchurch and he's just starting out. He's looking to get some track experience. Might have done a few have-a-go days and the like. Good on you, Cappy, for filling out your form. Welcome to racing. Look forward to announcing you during the day. Samuel Wright, age 22, on the Wright Golf Yamaha R3. He's from Wakefield up in Nelson. And he's sponsored by Wright Racing, Wright Golf and Bunkerball. He's been racing for 4 years. In fact, he's been racing motocross since the age of 5, and he's following in the footsteps of his father and his younger brother. So his highlights, major racing achievements, Southern Race Series champion for 2023. Third in the New Zealand Grand Prix 2024 on 300 Supersport, and he's got multiple junior motocross titles. And a fun fact, he's got 2 sausage dogs, Wallace and Alfie, and he's going to Australia for the 3rd consecutive year to MotoGP. Bit jealous of that. Good work, that young man. Well done, Samuel Wright. Thank you for filling in your Christopher Reynolds, age 19. He's on the silver and light blue number 89 Yamaha R3. He's based in Christchurch, and his sponsor is Rangi Express Engineering, and he's been racing for a couple of years. Welcome to racing, Christopher. Thank you for filling in your form. And Anson Hung, silver and light blue R3. He's the other rider from HR2 Racing, and this is This is Anson's second race series, and he got started by attending a Have a Go Day. It's a good way to get started. Thank you guys for filling in your forms.
What we'll do is we'll tuck away now. Yep, 3 blocks there. We'll just stop this recording. Everybody's running late.
They announced it over the speaker that if you don't have an accident, or be careful because there's no ambulance here.
Then what we'll do is we'll go take that camera across to them.
Yep.
Which is the one in that bag.
This one here.
Yep.
Does it have a zip up?
Oh, don't do it right up, just close it. I'll grab them an extra battery, give me a minute. Yeah, that's full. Yeah, just grab it like that, right? They won't start the race until the end, right? I'm going to take this camera, they're borrowing a camera, I'm just going to take it around to the other side, and then we'll tidy this up, and we'll be back. And I'll put it right in.
So first session of the day for the Formula 3 bikes. And first up to the line to make sure that he's out nice and early is Nixon Frost. Nixon's made his way down from Wellington to put some laps in, get himself up to speed before he heads off to Indonesia and then Australia later in the year. So well done, Nixon. Thank you for coming down. Look forward to commentating you for the day. Other riders of note, Dennis Charlotte, number 15. Hunter Charlotte, number 73. Diego Petrucci, number 75. Chris Huddlestone, number 68. Chris has been a campaigner for more years than he cares to admit. Good to see a good field of Formula 3 bikes out there. So Nixon Frost leading them out, keen to get some lap time in. As well as training for Indonesia and Thailand, this gives him a chance to work on his bike setup for the National Championships. This first session is only a look around session. Yes, it does count to a degree because it's qualifying. However, there is no ambulance here, so discretion is called for. Hopefully the ambulance won't be too far away and then we can get on with racing proper. But in the meantime, make sure you ride safe and with consideration for your fellow racers. Crisp start to the day for everyone, but the day will warm up as it goes along. Not expecting massive temperatures, but in the mid-teens would be nice. See a bit of a lift in the track temperature and the grip levels will increase as the day goes on. Remember to check your tyre warmers are plugged in and operating. Starting to see a few lap times come up on the screen, but at this stage they mean nothing because they're just, everyone's just cruising around getting a feel for the circuit. As the day goes on, I'll pull out lap times and positions. Grace, 46.4 will be the next fastest. Dean Charlotte, Chris Huddlestone, both rolled 150, 151, 152 respectively. Hunter Charlotte and 151. Dennis Charlotte's gone fastest of the lot, the 143.814. Chris Huddlestone, a 143.995, and then Nixon Frost with a 145. So people are starting to feel their way onto the circuit, feel the grip levels. Fastest lap, a 148.4. Hunter Charlotte also a 148. Brenda Booth 153. Cabby Colworth 154.143. Cabby's 24 years old and from Christchurch, and he's just starting out. So good time there for Cabby. Diego Petrucci, a 149, and Sam Knight, also a 149. Lots of riders in that 152 to 159 bracket, and a few just in the 2 to 2.5. So far for the Formula 3s is Dennis Charlotte with a 142. Just pushing along for these little bikes in these sort of weather conditions. .142.669 for Dennis Charlotte. Luke Ryder, a 143. It's a good time from Luke, well done. Huddlestone and Nixon Frost, who are four fastest for the morning so far in the Formula 3. Change in positions there in terms of lap time. Chris Huddlestone and Will Furness. But that'll be alright for Nixon. He'll be just feeling his way into the day. It's his first time back at Will Furness for a little while. Perhaps a change of time. Charlotte Wilfern's Nixon Frost Harriet race Diego for the grid.
Don't even have family here.
No, well, it's like the same. You've got 2 kids and a wife over in Holland. He's got all of the pictures. Yeah. You can't go back there.
It's fucking crazy, eh?
You can't go back there for a holiday.
And welcome to the ambulance, the team from ProMed EMS Trust. Thank you for your attendance today. We look forward to not having to use you.
I might leave that one out. So, you're right, you're right.
So in Formula 1 and Formula 2, people have filled in their forms, not many. There's a story, so racing age 63 years. Rides in Formula 2 in Kawasaki, it's our 600, and he's sponsored by Southern Cross Jewels in Dunedin. Michael's been racing for a number of years. First second in New Zealand in 1981 and 1982. He's been second 4 times in the Port Nelson street races. He's been first, second and third at Wanganui street races. And New Zealand's top street racer for the Boxing Day for the last 3 years. So Michael, an avid race fan and particularly fond of the street racing. I remember Michael from back in the Formula, what was it, the Festival Road Race down in Dunedin. It's been a long time since that's been run. Angus, thank you for filling in your form. Angus is age 20, he rides a Triumph Daytona 675 and he's from Wakefield. He's been racing for a couple of years. And how did he get started? Well, this might sound like a familiar journey to some of us. How did you get started? Well, I lost my license and thought I'd better take it to the track. Then I got stuck in the endless hole, but I love every minute of it. Road racing is the way forward. Second in Formula 2 at the Burt Munro, second in Formula 2 at the Sound of Thunder, and second in the Best of British Bears Championship. And he's a fun fact, he's got long hair that he gets tied into pigtails for his racing. Well done, Angus. Look forward to seeing you racing out there.
Are you going to put it away?
So that's Angus heading out there now on bike number 96, followed by Dale Finch. Bike number 17, Riley Foster heading out. Bike number 76 is Carl Waho, followed by Samuel Mullen, Aaron Scott on the Aprilia, Doug Oxenham and Michael Lee on the Kawasaki. That's Seth Devereaux heading out on the Formula 2 bike. And believe it or not, Sloane Frost, the legend himself, New Zealand Superbike champion, Sound of Thunder champion, absolute all-round good guy and father of Nixon Frost. Sloane's come down to have a ride on a Yamaha R6 that he's built for his son Nixon, who is not old enough to race it yet. So Sloane thought he'd come out and do a few laps just for fun. It'll be interesting to see what sort of lap time he can put in. Bike number 132, Dan McKenzie. Now, is that the Honda Fireblade, the nostalgic ride for the day? Or is he out on his Ducati? Remains to be seen. We'll see as he gets around there. John Lowther, another Long-time campaigner, bike number 42. John will probably be on a Yamaha R1, but as he hasn't filled in his form, it's a little hard to say.
Be careful you don't jam any cables in the edges.
Diego Petrucci out there, bike number 68. Good to see Diego out there having a run in a couple of classes today. Very talented rider who runs a rider training school, not an official ACC accredited one, but more based around the finer points of riding for racing. So there's Angus and Dale crossing the line, 149 and a 147 respectively. Early days yet, they'll put in much faster times as the day goes on. Kyle Ryder, sorry, Riley Foster going through 154, now it's got a 149. Seth Devereux 150. Seth, the long-time campaigner, originally based out of Tapanui, now I believe in Cromwell. Good to see Seth out doing some racing again. Warren Hudson, a 148. Warren will be out there on his CBR Fireblade. Early Model 1. Dan McKenzie, 152.9. John Lowther out there doing 155, so it's early days for John. I'm sure he'll get his head down and push on. Of course, good to see the Superbike and Super Sport 600 riders, Formula 2 riders, I suppose, these days. Out there showing clean lines. A nice way to scrub in for the day. Always good to get your brain and your bike up to temperature on the first session. So Dale Finch and Angus pushing along, both doing 139s, so respectable times given that it's practice qualifying. First two riders to drop into the 130s. There's Aaron Scott just crossing the line. We'll just wait and see what his time pops up as. Aaron Scott, a 137.8, so leading the charge. There's Warren Hudson just crossing the line as well. Michael Lee also. Seth Devereux rolling into third place. Just been bumped by Sloane Frost into third. Sloane Frost with 138.881. That's good riding from Sloane. It's been a long time since Sloane's done some laps around here, but I'm sure he knows his way around the circuit very, very well, being a former Superbike champion and former Beers champion. Won the Sound of Thunder on a BMW S1000RR back in the, would have been around 2012, 2013, I would imagine. So, a long time between laps for Sloane down here. Still showing he's got the skills. Dan Jenkins a 136.4. That's excellent time from Dan. Aaron Scott a 137.8 and Sloane Frost a 138. There's your top three for the morning so far. I expect that'll get a little bit of a shake up as the day goes on. Dale Finch 136.4. Absolutely pushing the pace now. Dan Jenkins at 136.4 as well. So halfway through the session now. It's Dale Finch, Aaron Scott, Dan Jenkins, Seth Devereux. Oh, just a wee change there. Sloane Frost just pipping Seth Devereux with a 137. Sloane's getting his eye in, finding his way around the track again. Warren Hudson putting in a good time, 139. So if you want to be at the header end of this field, under 1 minute 40 is going to be the lap time for the day. Dan Jenkins a 1:35.1. Dan's really pushing the pace now, and he's out there on a Formula 2 bike. So that will be undoubtedly a Triumph 675. Dan Jenkins a 1:35.1. Dale Finch 1:36.4. Aaron Scott 1:36.4. Sloane Frost 1:37.9. So here we have Aaron Scott crossing the line on the beautiful looking Aprilia RSV4. Fantastic bike. Sloane Frost putting in his best lap of the day, 1:37.369. Seth Devereaux also putting in a good lap, 1:37.79. Excellent riding. Michael Lee just crossing the line there on the green Kawasaki. Michael Lee a 1:42.0. Diego Petrucci a 1:41.8. That's good riding from Diego. So ride of the day, number 16, Dan Jenkins, leading the pace. Dan Jenkins a 1:33.6. Dale Finch a 1:34.5, just posted his fastest lap. Aaron Scott a 1:37.090. Sloane Frost a 1:37. There's your top four. Seth Devereaux 1:37.8, Warren Hudson 1:39.0, and Angus Fenn, followed by Dan McKenzie. So there's your first couple of rows on the grid so far. Luke Ryder in 9th place on a Formula 2 bike. A good mix of Formula 1 and Formula 2 bikes there. Interestingly enough, it's a Formula 2 bike that's leading the lap times for this session. 778 Riley Foster just going across the line there. So Dan Jenkins on the Formula 2 bike with a 1:33.692, followed by Dale Finch on the Formula 1 1:34. So it looks like we've lost the live timing, so hopefully we can get that sorted. Ah, there we go, the live timing's back. Thank you for that. So Dan Jenkins leading the way, followed by Dale Finch and Aaron Scott. Sloane Frost in 4th place, followed by Seth Devereaux in 5th position. Good riding there by everyone involved. 6th position Warren Hudson, 7th Angus Fenn, Dan McKenzie in 8th and Luke Ryder in 9th. Diego Petrucci in 10th, John Lowther 11th, Michael Lee in 12th. So that sorts out the first 3 or 4 rows. Couple of riders choosing to use the coned off back section as a practice start zone. It's a safe place to do it. No chance of being collected by another rider. So next up we have 300 Supersport. And again, first to line up and first to be ready to head out onto the grid is Nixon Frost. Well done, Nixon, for showing the way. It's good to have everyone out and ready so that the program can roll on. As I look down onto the pit road there, I can clearly see that Nixon Frost's running the Bridgestone tyres. So Nixon's certainly down here testing and getting himself sorted out for the National Championships, given that Bridgestone tyres are the tyre for this season. It's a smart move to come down and get a bit of practice in racing on the tyres that you're going to be racing on for the season. Smart thinking from Sloan and Nixon Frost there. Well done. Bike number 70 beside him, the Joe's Garage bike, looking in beautiful condition as well. Also running the Bridgestone slicks. So again, out here testing and preparing for the National Championship season, which is coming around faster than people realise. A lot of the riders having to make a change from their preferred choice of tyres to the Bridgestone tyres for this season, as Bridgestone will be sponsoring the NZSBK. They are the control tyre for the series. So that's Harriet Grace, bike number 70, the Joe's Garage bike. Nice to see some immaculately prepared bikes out there on the grid for the 300 Supersport. Diego Petrucci, bike number 75, also one to watch out for. Will Furness, number 173. Will's riding the KTM 390. A mix of engine capacities based on cylinder numbers. So a 300 or 320cc single cylinder, twin cylinder, sorry, a 390cc single cylinder. That looks like Hunter Charlotte making his way out of the pits. Hunter's a seasoned campaigner for such a young man. Regularly travels to Australia. He's raced in Indonesia, I believe, as well. So a couple of international riders in this field, despite the younger age. I see Carlin Self in there as well. First across the line is Nixon Frost leading the way, followed by Harriet Grace and Diego Petrucci. Lucas Scott behind and Oliver Wright with Will Furness, and all in the 150 to 154s. Of course, the first lap, just getting your eye in, making sure your tyres are up to temperature, your brake pads are up to temp, making sure everything's working. Getting your brain up to speed as well is a big part of it on your first session, first time out. For some of these riders, it might have been a few months since they've been out here and done a couple of laps, so it does take time for your brain to adjust to the speed. Watching Hunter Charlotte coming through the dipper, takes a fantastic line through there and gets a good run on the way out. Nice speed around to the Turn 11 CMG motorcycle sweeper. And everyone having a good little run into Turn 4 Euromark hairpin, one of the hardest braking sections of the track, coming down from quite a high speed into quite a low speed corner. Top riders braking at around the 100 metre mark. The smaller bikes can brake a little later, they're carrying a little less speed. It's a critical part of the track. Critical place to defend. There's many an overtake into that corner. There's Hunter Charlotte just tipping in there, showing a really nice line, hugging the curbs. Good exit line on the way out. And there we go, Nixon Frost a 144.0, Diego Petrucci 144.5, Harriet Grace a 144.8, Lucas Scott 145. So Nixon Frost leading the charge on the 300 Supersports. Likes to get out early and put in some good lap times. Will Furness 147.7, sorry, a 147.0, and Oliver Wright a 147.02. Not much to choose from between those two riders. So a whole gaggle of riders in that low 151, 152. Kai Johnson, Christopher Reynolds, Brendan Booth, a 154. Cameron James, a 155. Hannah Oli, a 156. Josh Hook, a 157. Hunter Charlotte putting down the pace, 143.618 ahead of Nixon Frost, 144.0. Everyone's starting to put in their fastest laps now. Hannah Ole, a 156.2. That's pushing on. Well done, Hannah. Sam Wright, a 147.0. So good riding by Sam. Diego Petrucci, 144.5. So everyone's settling in now. Lap times seem to be holding nice and consistent. Hunter Charlotte, 143. It's the fastest time for this session. Good to see Cappy Colworth out there, just getting started in his motorcycle racing, running around in 15th position. That's good work. Good work, Cappy. Keep riding like that, mate. You've got a good future ahead of you. Nice one. Thank you, mate. There we go. Luke Ryder just bringing up his rider information. Thank you for that, Luke. Good to see. Makes it so much easier for me to commentate. So Hunter Charlotte, 143.1, putting in his best lap time of the day. Nixon Frost, 144.4. So a 1.3 second gap between Hunter and Nixon. But I'm sure as the temperature comes up, so will the blood pressure, and Nixon will press on. Remembering that this is Nixon's first time here on the Bridgestone tyres, so he'll be primarily working on his setup for the National Championship Series and less concerned on his positions for the day. Of course, it's always nice to win. And there we go, Nixon putting a push on, a 143.5, so he's just knocked 0.9 of a second off his best lap time, so well done there. Nixon responding to the challenge. Cameron James, a 153. Harriet Grace, fantastic riding from Harriet, a 144.3 to put her in third place ahead of Diego Petrucci, Lucas Scott and Oliver Wright. Will Furness in 7th position. Will riding the Nelson Motorcycles KTM 390. So shout out to Sam Wright as well in 8th place. Good riding, Sam. Fill out your rider profile form and I'll be able to say a little bit more about you. Jian Huang in 9th place. Tom Woodhouse putting in his best lap of the session, 156.2. Cappy Cleworth up to 11th place with a 149.0. Well done, Cappy. You keep riding like that, mate. You'll be a champion in no time. And with 1 minute to go, this will be everyone's last chance to put in a fast lap for qualifying. Hunter Charlotte currently leading the way with 143.1, followed by Nixon Frost, 143.4. So that's first and second. Let's see if anyone can get into the 142s. I think Nixon's going to try hard, but it looks like Hunter Charlotte might have got tangled up with a couple of riders, so that will have blotted this lap. Hopefully he can get round in time to put in another one, because he's now got a little bit of clear track ahead of him. He's got 22 seconds to make it to the line as he just comes onto the straight. I think he'll get there in enough time. Here he comes now, crossing the line. So Hunter will get the chance to put in one more fast lap. Certainly he got a little bit balked on that lap, but that's the way it is when you're trying to put in a fast lap time, and he did. So that was a 1:44.5 compared to his 1:43.1, his best lap time of the day. Looks like Nixon Frost struggled a little bit on that lap as well with 1:45. So that is the end of this session. Let's see if anyone can post a faster time than Nixon or Hunter. Harriet Grace in third place, 1:44.3, followed by Diego Petrucci, a 1:44.5. So there's Nixon just crossing the line. Let's see what his time comes up as. I don't think he will have done enough to bump. No, he hasn't. So 1:43.7. It was a good effort on his last lap, almost within 0.2 of his best lap, but still a little bit away from Hunter, who's doing a 1:43.1. So Hunter Charlotte, Nixon Frost, Harriet Grace, Diego Petrucci, Lucas Scott, Oliver Wright, Sam Wright and Will Furness taking out 8th place. So there's your first couple of rows on the grid. Hunter Charlotte and Nixon Frost, placings confirmed for last year's NZSBK, with Nixon Frost finishing first and Hunter Charlotte finishing second. The results just confirmed this week, so good to see that all settled, and now we can get on with looking forward to the 2026 season. So congratulations to Hunter Charlotte and Nixon Frost for first and second today. Harriet Grace third position, Diego Petrucci 4th, Lucas Scott in 5th, Oliver Wright 6th, Sam Wright 7th, Will Furness 8th, Juan Hung 9th, Brendan Booth 10th, Cappy Colworth in 11th place. A fantastic ride from an emerging young rider there, Cappy, well done. 24 years of age. Samuel Wright, also a fantastic ride on the Wright Golf Yamaha R3, age 22 and coming all the way down from Wakefield and Nelson. So Samuel's sponsors are Wright Golf and Bunker Ball. So obviously a golfing family there. Good to see you taking up a different sport there, Samuel. Well done. So congratulations to everyone out there. Well ridden. So 250 production and Supersport 300. 250 production, we have Alex McElwain leading the way and Dan Jenkins on the Supersport bike. Alex McElwain 153.8, Dan Jenkins 153.8 also. Hunter Charlotte 155.2. See bike number 52, Ryder Chamberlain out there. Sean McCurry, 158, good riding there. So shout out to Jason Jones on the 250 production bike. Jason's from Timaru. He's 44 years old and he hasn't ridden any bike in 2 years. And apparently he got talked into coming in having a crack today. So good on you for that. He's riding the King of Canterbury full series and the Southern Race Series, and he's doing the full series of that as well. So well done, Jason Jones, for getting out there and having a crack. Awesome to see. So that's Jason Jones, currently running around in 17th position. Bike number 80, 250 production, and he's doing a 2 minute 8.2. So well done, Jason. Good to see you out there, mate. Fantastic riding. Another bike out there, David Phillips, Suzuki RG250, and he's riding a Supersport 150, sorry, RG150. And he's from Canterbury. He's riding the King of Canterbury full series and the Greymouth Street Race, and he's been racing for 8 years. And he got into it by starting to help out a mate in the pits, and then he decided he'd have a crack himself. So well done, David, at age 54. Great to see you out there and having a crack, mate. Well done. So David out there having a crack and running around in 11th place on bike number 10. Good riding. Well done. It's awesome to see. Dan Jenkins 154, Alex McElwain a 2 minute. Chris Cardamole, there's a name from the past, 208.9. Ryder Chamberlain jumping up to 7th position with a 202 ahead of David Phillips, who's just popped himself up into 8th position, also with a 202. That's the end of this session. So Dan Jenkins leading the way with a 152.8. Alex McElwain in 2nd position, a 2 minute. Hunter Charlotte, 155. Carl Waho, a 156. Sean McCurry with a 158. And Jack Cotton. So Dan Jenkins leading the way with 152.8, followed by Alex McElwain on 153.8. Hunter Charlotte, a 155.2, and Kawaho, a 156. Sean McCurry, a 158.6. And we have the recovery vehicle going out. Oh, yep. So recovery vehicle heading round to, it looks like, can't see where that bike is. So obviously the rider's fine. So race order for that class will be Dan Jenkins, Alex McElwain, Hunter Charlotte and Kawaho, followed by Sean McCurry, Jack Cotton, Eli Leonard and Ryder Chamberlain, David Phillips, Taylor Cullen Holder, Jason Jones and Angela Charlotte, Samuel Eagle, Brendan Malloy, Samuel Maybe and Brendan Booth, Jack Clapham and Sam Fraser, Chris Cardamole and Jack Nemo. So, random rider profile. Rider number 29, Sam Hawkins. Sam's racing a Husqvarna FS 450 and also a Yamaha YZF 450 Super Motard, and he hails from Westport. He loves the Greymouth street races and he's been racing for a couple of years. And he started out as a child watching family and friends race dirt bikes and motorcycles. A few years ago they watched the Greymouth street races and the Supermotos, and he said, heck yeah, we want to do that. So, Sam, good on you mate for taking the plunge and having a crack. Well done. Great to see. Heading out on the street-going VTR 1000. Fun looking bike. I see that man out there at the Have a Go days regularly. Turned up this morning with these street bike tyres on, and he'd been going so hard that he'd worn the edges off and didn't pass scrutineering. Fortunately, someone in the pits was kind enough to sell him a used slick and lend him a rear tyre warmer for the day, so it'll be interesting to see how he goes with the slick on the back. The lads in the pits did tell me his nickname, but fortunately for him, I've forgotten it. Bike number 181, Stephen Smith, heading out for his Clubman's ride. So let's pull up another random rider profile. We have Diego Petrucci, bike number 19. He's riding both a Yamaha R3 and a Triumph Daytona. So his sponsors are Evolve Moto, The Workshop Christchurch Limited, iStudios, Evolve Glass Limited. And he's racing both the King of Canterbury and the Southern Race Series. And he's been racing for 3 years. He started racing at 16 years old on a Ninja 250. After his first ride, he was addicted. Now he travels all over New Zealand to compete in NZSBK. He's had some good successes. Second overall in the 150 Supersport New Zealand Superbike 2023. First overall in 150 Supersport 2024. First overall 300 Supersport in 2024 as well, so a good year of 2024. He was born in Spain and can speak both Spanish and Italian, throws in a little bit of Kiwi as well into the mix. Diego.Petrucci1 if you want to learn more about Diego. So there we go. There's Eli crossing the line on his VTR 1000. Now I've just been informed that Eli's nickname is in fact Slick Rick. So Slick Rick on the VTR 1000. Well done, buddy. Excellent riding out there today from you. I do notice, however, that you haven't got a transponder on, so perhaps you could pop down and see one of the officials and grab yourself a transponder for the day. Be nice to be able to call out your lap times. So coming up to the end of this session now with 1 minute 27 seconds to go, I would suggest that this would be everyone's last opportunity to cut a lap. So some pretty good lap times there from the Clubmans. Riley Foster on the motard, 1:44.9. Dean Prattley in the Clubmans class, 1:46.661. That's nice and fast, Dean. Good work. Samuel Hawkins, 1:49.256, also on a motard. Good riding there, Sam. Well done. So random rider shout out to John Lowther, rider number 42. John's 50 years old and he's been racing a long time. I remember racing with John back in the early 2000s, late 1990s in fact. John's currently riding a Aprilia RSV4 and a Yamaha R6 in Formula 1 and Formula 2 respectively. He's based in Christchurch and he's riding the full King of Canterbury series. John started riding in 1996 and he rode through to 2008. Then he took a little bit of a break and started again in 2021. In 2006, John came first in the New Zealand Grand Prix 250 class and was first overall for King of Canterbury from 2002 to 2008, 6 years in a row. An amazing run and a very talented rider. Good to see John back at a club level having a ride and enjoying his time back racing. So here we go with the first race of the day, starting with Formula 3. Great class to start with, bike 818, first out on the track. So rider profile for this class, Harriet Grace, bike number 24 on the Yamaha R3. Sponsored by Helicraft Racing and Joe's Garage, Bartercard and Night and Day. Harriet's riding the King Canterbury Full Series and the Southern Race Full Series. She started in March 2022, so she's been racing just over 3 years. She's in her second year of university, and she converted her road-going R3 into a race bike after attending some have-a-go days. She got the racing bug and slowly chipped away at lap times and understanding how to race. She joined Helicraft Racing at the start of 2025 and completed her first full national season, finishing 11th overall. That's a good result in your first ever full season, Harriet. Well done. So that's Harriet Grace on the magnificent looking Joe's Garage, bike number 24. Also in this class, Peter Fish, riding a Yamaha R3. Peter's 22 years old, and he got introduced into racing after pit crewing for his partner, who coincidentally was our spotlight rider, Harriet Grace. He's loving the low pressure fun, and yes, actually his last name is Fish, and yes, he has heard all the jokes. Welcome to racing, Peter. We hope you enjoy your racing. Fantastic to have you on board. Kai Johnston, aged 20 years old. He's riding a Yamaha R3, sponsored by Hamilton Jet Engineering and Cherry Red Livery. He's on a Supersport 300 bike, and it's his first season of racing this year. After road riding for 3 years, he thought he'd sharpen up his skills and have a blast. Well, this is definitely going to sharpen up your road riding skills, Carl. So, front row of the grid ready and lined up and ready to go. Big field with 34 riders. Some riders having to start from pit lane after failing to make it out in time. A harsh lesson. Please be up on the grid in time. We will not wait. And a good start from Hunter Charlotte. Dennis Charlotte on the inside, a little slow to get away. Good little break at the front by the first two riders, and then a large group coming in behind into the hairpin. Nice tidy riding through there by everyone. Some massive braking duels in the middle of the field though. Hunter Charlotte not getting the start he thought he would. Slipped back to 6th or 7th or 8th place, in fact. I'm going to say that looks like Dennis Charlotte in 2nd position. So as they come down the straight, this will make it a bit easier to pick out who they are. Luke Ryder in 1st position. So we have Luke Ryder followed by Dennis Charlotte and Chris Huddlestone. Nixon Frost in 4th place, Hunter Charlotte in 5th, Will Furness in 6th, and Samuel Eagle in 7th place. So as they went across the line, Luke Ryder a 142.5, Dennis Charlotte a 144.5, Chris Huddlestone a 146.8, and Nixon Frost a 148.9. So the first two riders on the first lap putting in a real head down effort and pulling out quite a considerable gap, with Luke Ryder pulling away by more than 4 seconds over 3rd place. So excellent riding by Luke Ryder and Dennis Charlotte to make a break at the start of the session. Chris Huddlestone working hard in third position. Nixon Frost looking to settle into fourth, but being followed hard by Hunter Charlotte and Will Furness and Sam Eagle. Harriet Grace looks like she's moving up through the field. So Luke Ryder leading the way with a 1:39.4. Dennis Charlotte with a 1:40.1. Chris Huddlestone a 1:41.3. And Will Furness a 1:42.2. Nixon Frost dropping back to fifth place, 1:43.2. So Luke Ryder looks to have stretched out a bit of a gap ahead of ahead of Dennis Charlotte. A gap of almost 2 seconds by the look of it, and then another 4 seconds back to Chris Huddlestone, then another 3 seconds back to Nixon Frost. So Luke Ryder having a look behind him, just checking on where Dennis Charlotte is. He's got a fairly comfortable lead now. There's Chris Huddlestone coming across the line, followed by Will Furness, Hunter Charlotte and Nixon Frost. So we've got a gap of 1.4 seconds from Luke Ryder to Dennis Charlotte, and then a further gap of 5 seconds back to Chris Huddlestone. So the race looks to have settled down a little bit now. First, second and third look to be quite well settled into their positions. Even fourth place appears to have a fairly clear run now. That would be Will Furness in fourth place. So as they head round the CMG Motorcycle Sweeper, we do have Luke Ryder in first position with a 2-second gap over Dennis Charlotte, being followed by Chris Huddlestone and Will Furness. Hunter Charlotte in fifth place and Nixon Frost in sixth. And in fact, it looks like Nixon's just got ahead of Hunter. So in that last lap, Nixon Frost just put in his best lap time, a 1:42.2, to come ahead of Hunter Charlotte. Now that's a battle that's going to go on all season, Nixon Frost and Hunter Charlotte. Both very determined racers and very highly skilled for young men. Luke Ryder, though, showing the way, absolutely storming ahead. Harriet Grace doing a great job coming through in 7th position behind Hunter Charlotte. Harriet riding the Joe's Garage. Lovely looking bike there, sponsored by Hallicraft Racing. Does that appear to be Nixon Frost parked over on the runoff area from turn 4, Euromark Hairpin, looking down at the bike. We'll have to check as the timing monitor goes past. It's a little far to see from here. So there's Harriet Grace crossing the line, bike number 70 in what will either be 6th or 7th place. So it is in fact Nixon Frost parked over in the background there because he has failed to come through. So we have Luke Ryder in first, Dennis Charlotte second, Chris Huddlestone in third, Will Furness in fourth. Will's from Nelson, supported by Nelson Motorcycles. Hunter Charlotte, Harriet Grace, Samuel Eagle and Lucas Scott, followed by Sam Wright and Juan Huang. Good little battle in the midfield as they're diving into the dipper there. But at the front of the field, it is Luke Ryder by a considerable margin, 3 point something seconds. So fantastic riding there, Luke, to be able to head the field. And that's the end of that race. So in the end of the race we have Luke Ryder in first place, Dennis Charlotte second, Chris Huddlestone in third, Will Furness fourth, Hunter Charlotte in fifth and Harriet Grace in sixth position. A great ride by everyone involved. There's Harriet just crossing the line now, followed by Samuel Eagle and Lucas Scott with Sam Wright in ninth, and it will be Juan Huang coming through in 10th place. Good battle for 10th and 11th there. That battle's been going on the entire race. And here we go again, another battle as they cross the line. So it was Juan Hung in 10th and Oliver Wright in 11th, Chris Reynolds in 12th. So Chris Reynolds, who finished in 12th place, 19 years old, and he's based in Christchurch. His sponsors are Rangi Express Engineering, and he's been racing for nearly 2 years. So he's riding the King of Canterbury Full Series and the Southern Race Series. That will certainly give him the opportunity to gain a bit more track time and a bit more experience. Well done, Christopher Reynolds. So it seems that Nixon's got his bike going again. I'm sure they'll be having a good check out and trying to figure out what's up with that. Hopefully something minor, and hopefully we'll see them back out again today. So next up we have the big boys, Formula 1 and Formula 2. This is where the lap times are set. High speed, high horsepower bikes ridden by highly skilled riders. This is the class act of the field. Usually a smaller field than some of the smaller bike classes due to the cost involved in running a superbike. They are extremely expensive to run, extremely demanding on both tyres, engines and riders. So shout out to rider Sam Mullen, bike number 23 on a Triumph Daytona 675 riding in Formula 2. He's from Darfield and his supporters are Moto 1 New Zealand and Rick Stay Autos from Blenheim. He's riding the King of Canterbury full series and he's been racing off and on for 3 years. Samuel Mullen racing number 72. Whoop, jumping the gun there, number 96. A little bit eager to get out the gate. Bike number 11, Seth Devereaux heading them out. Seth's a seasoned campaigner, having spent several years racing for the Helicraft racing team. Predominantly racing the MV Augusta for Helicraft racing to mixed levels of success. Good to see Seth back out there and campaigning again after taking a wee sabbatical to get himself fixed. Warren Hudson, bike number 59. An older model 2008 R1. Warren's been racing for about 40 years. He turned up to a Have a Go Day about 40 years ago and has been racing ever since. He's had multiple first and second placings and certainly a top performer at a domestic level here in New Zealand. One of Canterbury's longest standing races, along with Dennis Charlotte. Good to see guys with this level of experience continuing on and passing on the knowledge to the younger riders. I note that Warren Hudson spent a lot of time coaching and training younger riders. So as they line up on the grid, Dan Jenkins and Dale Finch. Aaron Scott in third place. Sloane Frost on the Yamaha R6. Sloane just down for a bit of a good time. So Dan Jenkins in pole position, Dale Finch P2, Aaron Scott P3. It should be Sloane Foss, number 99, lining up in P4, but perhaps he's decided to stay and work on Nixon's bike. Would make sense. Here we go, ready for the start. A good start by Dan Jenkins. Great start by Dan Jenkins, leads them away through turn 1. Dale Finch following closely behind with Aaron Scott tucking back into 3rd position. So that's Seth Devereaux in 4th. Good hard braking into turn 1 by Seth closes up the position between 3rd and 4th. But Dan Jenkins making the break early, trying to put a gap between himself and Dale Finch as they run down into turn 6, Fulton Hogan, through the flop of turn 7 into turn 8, which ironically is called Nana's. Called Nana's because a older lady for years and years and years was the grid marshal down in, or the flag marshal down in turn 8. She loved sitting down there, and consequently the corner was named colloquially after her, turn 8 Nana's. So they flip through the Parks Towing S's into the section of the track we call the Dipper. It is Dan Jenkins leading the way from Dale Finch with Aaron Scott in 3rd place. Closed up quite tight behind him with Seth Devereaux and Warren Hudson. And Angus Fenn behind them. Dan McKenzie on bike number 132. Let's see if that's Dan's Fireblade or his Ducati. And as they cross the line, it is Dan Jenkins ahead of Dale Finch, Aaron Scott. Dan Jenkins, Dale Finch, Aaron Scott, Warren Hudson and Dan McKenzie leading the field through. Fastest lap though was put in by P2, Dale Finch, with the 1:37.792. Now I do expect that time will drop away. And it looks like Dale's closing up quite nicely now on Dan Jenkins. Seems to have got his eye in and feels his bike's coming up to temperature. Everything appearing to feel quite comfortable for Dale Finch as he pushes on. Closing right up now on Dan Jenkins as they come through Nana's up into turn 9, the Parks Towing S's. Dan manages to pull a few bike lengths on the exit. But Dale Finch very, very good on the brakes. Closing up as they make the run through the double left-hander into the Dipper. As they accelerate up over the crest, we dab a back brake to keep the front end down as they turn into CMG Motorcycle Sweeper. And it looks like Dale Finch might have the run on Dan. Let's see if he can get into the slipstream. Aaron Scott holding a good 3rd position. And here he comes, he's tucked in. Can he get the draft? He's right up behind him now as they tuck into Abbott's Corner, turn 2. Down the Waste Coast straight. And let's see if he can get a bit of a draft into Link Kink. Link Kink looks quite straight from this side of the track, but if you go over and have a look from the other side of the circuit, you'll see it is quite a sharp left-hand elbow. Dan doing a great job defending into turn 4, Euromark hairpin. Dale's just sitting closely behind as they come through Nana's. Aaron Scott holding a good 3rd place ahead of Warren Hudson with Dan McKenzie behind him. Looks like Dan's riding the Ducati with Angus Fenn and Seth Devereaux, bike number 11, pushing hard. Here comes Seth making a good move up the inside underneath Angus into the Parks Towing S's. That's a nice clean move through there. Now can he get through on Dan McKenzie? Of course the Ducati will have the grunt. It's a 11.99 V4 Panigale, it will absolutely have the grunt down the straight. But if Seth can get into the draft and get a good run behind him, as we see Dan Jenkins coming across the line again, heading Dale Finch now. Perhaps Dale's just sitting there watching what's going on. Maybe he's going to try and attempt a move on the last lap. We'll see. Dan's pulled out another good few bike lengths on the run down into Euromark hairpin. Good battle for 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th going on at the hairpin there. That's between Seth Devereaux and Dan McKenzie, Angus Fenn and John Lowther. John riding the RSV for Aprilia. And it looks like Seth Devereaux having a look round the outside. He's going to come for the cut back up into the right hand of the first part of the Parks towing S's. He's right beside him and he does manage to make the move on Dan McKenzie. So that was a good clean move, bringing him up into 5th position. He's got a lot of work to do to try and catch Warren Hudson now though, but never count out Seth Devereaux. And there's Dan Jenkins crossing the line with a 1:33.115, and that's his fastest lap of the day so far. So Dan Jenkins ahead of Dale Finch, Aaron Scott and Warren Hudson. Now Aaron and Warren having a good battle for 3rd and 4th place. Seth Devereaux coming across the line in 5th, but look at the power of that Ducati as Dan McKenzie just blasts past on the horsepower towards the end of the straight. Now, did he manage to pull it up in time, or has Seth managed to get through again on him? It looks like Dan's managed to make the move and make it stick. Seth will have a good run through Link Kink and a real try down into the hairpin, into Euromark hairpin. And that's where the interesting part of the racing is, ladies and gentlemen, is for 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th. 1st and 2nd looks to be almost settled now, with Dan Jenkins pulling out a bit of a gap, probably 1.5 seconds over 2nd place Dale Finch, with Aaron Scott holding a nice little gap. Actually, it looks like Warren Hudson's come through. Aaron Scott must have made a mistake on the infield. So Warren Hudson up to 3rd place ahead of Aaron Scott. Warren riding the 2008 Yamaha, and Aaron Scott riding the RSV for Aprilia, so a much more modern bike. And there's Dan Jenkins going across the line. Again, setting another fantastic lap, a 1:33.087 with Dale Finch, a 1:33.4. So Dan just pulling out a little bit of a gap. And then we have Warren Hudson in 3rd place. Best lap time for Warren Hudson, a 1:35.9. Aaron Scott coming in 4th. Best lap time, 1:37.5. So Dan Jenkins running away with this one. Best lap time of a 1:33.08. Well, it looks like Dale Finch has put in a good lap. He's closed up a couple of bike lengths. Let's see if he can get the toe down the straight, get into the draft. I think he's a little bit far back. And here we go, it's Dan Jenkins, 1st place, followed by Dale Finch in 2nd. Warren Hudson in third. And Aaron Scott coming through for a hard-fought fourth place. Seth Devereaux finally coming through in fifth. Angus Fenn in sixth and Dan McKenzie in seventh with John Lowther in eighth. Good ride from John Lowther. Michael Lee on the green Kawasaki. Looks like he's just been pipped on this lap. And he has. So results for race one, Dan Jenkins in first place, Dale Finch in second, Warren Hudson on the Yamaha R1 in third, and Aaron Scott Aprilia RSV 4 in fourth. Seth Devereaux in fifth place ahead of Angus Fenn and Dan McKenzie. John Lowther in eighth, excellent ride from John. Luke Ryder in ninth place and Michael Lee in 10th. Carl Waho rounding out in 11th position. Doug Oxham in 12th, Riley Foster in 13th, Scott Miller in 14th, Daryl Hunt in 15th, and Samuel Mullen not completing the race. A good result from everyone involved there, fantastic riding and good to see. So we have the recovery vehicle heading out. That will be to pick up the rider between turn 2 and turn 3 on the West Coast Straight. So rider profile from that race was Carl Waho, number 48, riding a GSXR 750K8 in Formula 1. He's from Christchurch and his sponsors are Boiling Point Limited. He's racing the King of Canterbury and he's doing the full series and perhaps also the Southern Race Series. He's been racing for 3 years. In 2022 he joined, it was his first season racing a GSXR 750. And for 2023 and 2024, it was about pushing himself and learning about racecraft. He purchased a Ninja 250 in 2024, and he's on the Motorcycling Canterbury Incorporated Committee, and he's been brought here through his partner Harriet. Oh, nope, that's a line down. That's Peter Fish's partner's Harriet. So Carl, his highlight was winning a Formula race at levels and second place in the King of Canterbury. That's a good effort for a young man who's only 3 years into his racing career. Here we have 300 Supersport lining up, and it looks like Nixon Frost's bike has been sorted out, so good to see, out and ready to go. So lining up on the grid, it will be Hunter Charlotte in first position with Nixon Frost in second position, Harriet Grace in third position, and Diego Petrucci in fourth. Lucas Scott fifth, Oliver Wright in sixth, and Sam Wright in seventh. Will Furness from Nelson Motorcycles in position 8. Shout out to Maya Wilcox, bike number 18, riding the Yamaha MT-03 from Queenstown, supported by Hallicraft Racing and Bartercard. She's been racing for 1 year. She started off riding dirt bikes when she was 11 years old and recently made the move to road racing. Well done, Maya Wilcox, and welcome to Ruapuna. Local legend Dennis Charlotte, bike number 56, riding the Yamaha R3 in the Supersport 300 class, supported by Motor Mechanics, Lock & Code, Race Supplies and Optima Accounting. He's racing both the King of Canterbury and the Southern Race Series. Dennis has been racing for 41 years. He went to Blenheim to a go-kart track with his dad to watch go-karts, and the bucket races were racing. It was so cool, and all I wanted to do was get out there and do racing. So he went home and he converted his dad's Yamaha Ag 100 into a bucket racer and competed in the next bucket event, coming second on his first outing. He was hooked from then on, and he still loves road racing 41 years later. Well done, Dennis. His achievements, too many to list, having won every class in New Zealand Superbike from Grand Prix 125 to Superbike. His best achievement being part of teaching new, young and up-and-coming racers into the sport, and he absolutely loves that. So, in pole position, we have Hunter Charlotte, followed by Nixon Frost and Harriet Grace. Diego Petrucci in 4th place. Lucas Scott in 5th, Oliver Wright 6th, and Sam Wright 7th. Will Furness heading up 8th place. So that's your first 2 rows of the grid, and we're almost ready to go, ladies and gentlemen. We have a rider sitting off the back. Riders often do that when they're fresh, learning and new to the scene. It allows them to not be involved in the critical race start and gives them a wee bit of room. Just waiting on confirmation of the race start. Looks like all the riders are ready to go. Here we go. Wendy's heading off the track. Let's see who gets the good start. Will it be Hunter Charlotte, Nixon Frost, Harriet Grace, or Diego Petrucci? All of them ready to go. The lights come on, revs come up. Here we go. And Hunter Charlotte away early, but it looks like Nixon Frost got the best start of them all. Hunter having the inside line. Let's see if Nixon can roll across the top of him into turn 1. It looks like Hunter's got the better line. Nixon Frost out a little bit wide, tucks it in and rolls in through turn 2. And it is Hunter Charlotte leading the way with Nixon Frost in 2nd, Harriet Grace in 3rd, and Diego Petrucci in 4th. Good dicing for 3rd, 4th and 5th. Looks like a little bit of a break out the front for Hunter Charlotte with Nixon Frost following hard on. Good braking jewels into the Euromark hairpin turn 4, and as we flick through the S's up to turn 6 Fulton Hogan, it's Hunter Charlotte with a commanding lead on the first lap ahead of Nixon Frost with a similar sort of 5 bike gap back to, I think that's that might well be Diego Petrucci moving up into 3rd position ahead of Harriet Grace. Lucas Scott holding steady in 5th. And as they head round the double left-hander out of the S's and into the dipper, it is Hunter Charlotte with a 1.4 second lead over Nixon Frost, with about a 1.6 second lead over Diego Petrucci, who's being followed very, very closely by Harriet as she has a look up the inside. And it's going to be a good run for Harriet down the straight. She'll have the draft of Diego. And here we go. It is Hunter Charlotte ahead and leading the way. Hunter Charlotte ahead of Nixon Frost, 147.1 against a 147.6. So a good ride there by Hunter Charlotte and Nixon Frost. So Hunter Charlotte, Nixon Frost, Lucas Scott, Harriet Grace and Diego Petrucci. And that is a fantastic move from Lucas Scott to come up into third position. Fastest lap of the race goes to Hunter Charlotte with a 147.1, followed by Nixon Frost with a 147.6. Those times will change as that was from a standing start. Looks like Hunter's settled into that little gap, about a 1 second gap, and leading quite nicely from Nixon. They've pulled away quite successfully from third place, which is Lucas Scott. Although is that hard to tell? Perhaps that's Diego Petrucci who's just come through to take third place. We'll see as they come past the timing markers. But definitely Hunter Charlotte in the front ahead of Nixon Frost. And as the times drop away, 1:42.5 for Hunter, 1:42.7 by Nixon. And as they run down the straight out of Link Kink and down to Euromark, it is Hunter Charlotte leading the way. Nixon's pulled the gap back to about half a second. So he's definitely closing. Third place, Harriet Grace, Lucas Scott, Diego Petrucci. There's nothing to separate those. Again, back to Oliver Wright, Will Finnis and Sam Wright. A good little battle happening there as well. So individual battles all over the track, but the first and second battle is closing up with Nixon Frost closing right up onto the back wheel and having a look up the inside of Hunter Charlotte into turn 9, the Parks Towing S's. Difficult place to make a pass, but if you can get it done and get it in there cleanly, you can actually get a really good run through the double left and pull a gap. And we notice Nixon taking quite a different line to Hunter Charlotte as they go in through the dipper. Nixon looking for a bit better drive up the hill, and he's closed that gap right up behind Hunter Charlotte now. There's nothing in it if he gets a good draft out of this sweeper. But it looks like Nixon has a good run coming onto the straight, and he's pulled a bit of that gap again. He's pulled that gap out to about half a second. So Nixon doing all the hard work through the infield, but Hunter just getting that good clean drive off the end of the straight. So Hunter Charlotte, this time the gap down to 0.3 of a second. So Nixon Frost is closing, and he's closing fast as they come down into the Euromark hairpin. Will Nixon be able to outbrake Hunter? Now Hunter's a demon on the brakes and he knows this track very, very well. Difficult to make a pass through there. And Harriet Grace doing a great job holding on to third place. Lots of pressure being applied by Lucas Scott and Diego Petrucci. Although it looks like Harriet's just managed to pull a little bit of a break on them as they come out of the Euromark hairpin and run up into turn 6, Fulton Hogan. I think that there's a wee bit of battling going on between Lucas and Diego, and that's letting Harriet make a little bit of a gap. At the front, no. At the front, Nixon Frost is definitely challenging now for Hunter Charlotte for the race leading positions as they come into the dipper. Again, a slightly wider line by Nixon, looking for the run out up the hill, and he does manage to close up a little. Will he be in position to get the draft for the run down the straight? I don't think he's close enough this time. He's really got to get right behind to get the good draft. And here we go with 3 laps completed. Coming up to the end of the 4th lap, it is Hunter Charlotte ahead of Nixon Frost. And it looks like everyone's setting their fastest lap of the session as well. So Hunter Charlotte brings that gap back out to point 4 ahead of Nixon Frost. Harriet Grace, Lucas Scott and Diego Petrucci. Very, very close. Nothing to call it between those guys. Guys and girls, I should say. Excellent riding out there. So Harriet in 3rd looks to have pulled herself a little bit of breathing space ahead of Lucas and Diego. Will Furness slowly slipping back into the hands of Oliver Wright and Sam Wright. But as we come through the double left-hander,